Right, picture this. Two political movements, both furious at the establishment, both promising to tear up the rulebook, both chasing the same voters, pensioners fed up with their bills, veterans fed up with being ignored, working families fed up with being told to simply wait their turn. And between them, on paper, they could be looking at something close to 40% of the country. 40%! That is not a protest vote anymore. That is a small revolution waiting to happen. And yet, because of one quirk buried deep in how Britain counts its votes, all of that anger could add up to precisely nothing. 0 seats, 0 change, 5 more years of exactly the government these voters cannot stand. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you will understand the maths that nobody in Westminster wants to explain to you. Quick favor before we carry on, if you are enjoying this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of people watching right now have not done it yet. It costs nothing, takes a second, and it genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this one. Thank you if you did. Right, back to the show. So, let us set the stage properly. On one side, you have Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, a man who has spent decades learning precisely how the British electoral machine works, for better or worse. Reform has spent the past year bouncing around the top of the polls, trading places with Labour and the Conservatives depending on the week, generally hovering somewhere in the low to mid-20s. On the other side, you have Restore Britain, the party founded by former Reform MP Lowe after a rather public and rather bitter split. Restore has grown fast. It now has councillors dotted across the country, a growing membership, and an increasingly loud presence in the parts of Britain that feel most abandoned by Westminster. Two parties, two leaders, both furious at the same target, both drawing from remarkably similar voters, so naturally they're working together like a well-oiled machine, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. And that's exactly the problem. Here's where the analogy comes in, because numbers alone tend to make eyes glaze over. Think of the anti-establishment vote as a pizza. A rather large, rather delicious pizza that a lot of hungry voters would like a slice of. Reform takes one slice, Restore takes another slice. Individually, those slices look decent. Combined, they would be enough to feed the whole table. But under Britain's first-past-the-post system, nobody eats the combined pizza. Whoever grabs the single biggest slice wins the entire meal, crumbs and all, even if the other 2/3 of the pizza went to people who agree with each other completely. That's not a metaphor for how elections should work. That is, unfortunately, precisely how they do work. Let us put actual numbers on it, because this is where it stops being clever wordplay and starts being genuinely alarming. Picture a single constituency. Reform polls 30% there, Restore polls 8%. Add them together and you get 38% of that constituency essentially agreeing on the same broad direction for the country. Sounds like a comfortable win, does it not? Except Labour rolls in with 35% and the Conservatives limp home with 25%, and suddenly the maths flips entirely on its head. The party with 35% takes the seat outright. The other 65% of voters, the overwhelming majority, get nothing. Not a compromise, not a coalition, nothing. That's not hypothetical scaremongering, by the way. That is simply how first-past-the-post behaves whenever a similar block of voters gets split down the middle. And before you think this is some brand new theory nobody has tested, Britain has run this exact experiment before. Rewind back to 1983. The SDP and Liberal Alliance managed to pull in roughly a quarter of the entire national vote. 25% nationally is an enormous achievement for any political force. And what did they get for it? 23 seats. Out of 650, because their support was spread thinly across the map rather than concentrated where it could actually convert into wins, an enormous slice of the electorate ended up with barely a whisper of parliamentary representation. Popularity and power, it turns out, are not the same currency. You can be loved by a quarter of the country and still be functionally invisible in the House of Commons. That's the trap. That's the exact trap that a divided anti-establishment vote risks walking straight back into. Now, here's where it gets genuinely tricky, because this is not simply a case of two egos refusing to shake hands. Farage brings decades of experience actually navigating the machinery of British elections, building organisations, running national campaigns, and turning polling numbers into actual seats. Lowe, on the other hand, has built something with real energy and real grassroots momentum in a remarkably short space of time, but with far less experience negotiating the sort of high-stakes political deal-making that decides who stands where and who steps aside for whom. Both men have a legitimate case. Farage can point to national recognition and a track record of mobilizing voters. Lowe can point to deep local roots, a movement built from the ground up rather than handed down from the top. But here's the uncomfortable truth neither side particularly wants to hear. It doesn't actually matter which of them is more authentic, more principled, or more deserving of the anti-establishment crown. What matters when you're staring down a first-past-the-post system is which combination of candidates in which seats actually delivers the most members of Parliament. Feelings don't win elections, arithmetic does. And time, unfortunately, is not exactly on their side. This is not the sort of coordination you can sort out 3 weeks before polling day over a cup of tea and a handshake. Building an effective electoral pact, deciding who stands where, avoiding split votes in the exact seats where it would be fatal, that groundwork needs years, not months. Every month that passes without a serious conversation between these two camps is another month where the default outcome, division, quietly becomes locked in by inertia rather than by design. Nobody sits down one day and decides to fracture the vote on purpose. It simply happens seat by seat because nobody got around to stopping it in time. Here's the bit that really ought to sting, though. When this all goes wrong, it won't be Farage or Lowe who pays the price. They'll still have their platforms, their followings, their column inches. The people who actually lose out are the ordinary voters who felt for the first time in years that somebody in politics was finally listening to them. The pensioner watching their savings shrink. The veteran who feels forgotten the moment the uniform comes off. The family working every hour available and still falling behind. Those are the people who took a chance on something new, and if that chance gets swallowed up by vote splitting rather than genuine disagreement at the ballot box, the damage runs far deeper than one disappointing election night. It teaches an entire generation of disillusioned voters that even when they turn out in record numbers, even when they agree on what needs to change, the system finds a way to hand power straight back to the people they were trying to remove in the first place. That's not a bad result. That's the sort of result that makes people give up on voting altogether. So, where does that leave Britain? Not with a simple choice between one populist party or another, whatever the headlines might suggest. The real choice sitting underneath all of this is between transformation and repetition, between two movements finding a way to work the arithmetic in their favour while there is still time, or sleepwalking into another 5 years that looks remarkably like the 5 years everyone was so desperate to escape. History doesn't tend to repeat the exact same mistake by accident. It repeats it because nobody stopped it while they had the chance. That's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.